Good morning. I am here in my garden. It is Tuesday, July 5th, which means we are in recovery mode from a 3-day 4th of July weekend. There was late nights with fireworks. Laundry has piled up. The kitchen hasn't been taken care of. There's cherries to pick and process today. It's one of those days where you have to hit the ground running or the boat leaves without you. So I am happy that I get to do this before I have to hustle and do all the other things, because I would rather walk through the garden with all of you than do anything else. My zinnias have opened up and they are so beautiful. And I shared the story about my zinnias over on Instagram, but I'll share it here for you guys as well. And I know last week I shared how in previous garden years, like most of my gardening career, most of, our married life, my garden has always been, what's the word I'm looking for? Practical. It's been very practical. We raise food for the family. And it's not been until recently that I have room and energy and time to put some flowers in. And last fall when we went to Pennsylvania to visit my husband's family, my mother-in-law's zinnias were the most gorgeous zinnias I have ever seen. I've seen zinnias before in people's gardens, but they weren't near as showy as my mother-in-law's, and I'm gonna try and include a little photo of hers. And I was just in awe of them, and she just walked along and started picking her favorite ones. And she said, "Oh, you'll need one of each color." And she picked me a bunch, and she said, "Just take them home, lay them on some newspaper, and when they're all dry, she said, put them in a bag and put them in the freezer." And that's what I did. And she said, in the spring, you just dig a little trench and lay all the dried flowers in. And this is what I've got. Folks tell me if I pick them into bouquets, I will get more flowers. And I was going to pick a bouquet for our potluck host last night, and I forgot, but I will probably take a bouquet to a friend today. But anyway, that's the story behind my zinnias. And I'm gonna move to the east end of the garden, and I'm gonna show you what I'm doing to my black raspberries. So here are my black raspberries. And after visiting with my mother-in-law last year about this time, they were here visiting, and the black raspberries were already almost over last year at this time. And she kind of walked me through the why behind the pruning, and that inspired me for this year's pruning, and I did it a little earlier, and I'm going to tell you why, but I need to turn my camera around and show you how I did it first. So you can see that the woody canes are the canes that bear fruit. This is new growth, and this will actually be next year's bearing cane. Now, if I can just let this grow, and it'll just give a long arched cane, and it'll bear some fruit. Or I can cut it like I did these, and it'll branch out right here, and all of the branches will bear fruit. So when you're pruning, you're really just multiplying your fruit and keeping your raspberries more organized. Oh yeah, that one needs to be picked and eaten. I'm going to try and show you this one that's bearing fruit and show you where I trimmed it last year. Somewhere here. Nope, not there. Just looking for the spot where I trimmed it so that you can I think right there is where I pruned it last year, and then it branched out here, and it gave 2 other branches full of fruit. Instead of just 1 cane, I now have 2 canes of fruit. However, down here at the end, you can see where I had to cut it back because it froze back in the winter. So I had to trim off all the dead ends. And so when you prune back the new growth, then it branches out and you have more than 1 bearing cane. You have multiple bearing canes then. However, the canes need to be woody before they're hardy enough to get through the winter. So mature canes are the ones that get woody. So I started thinking, oh, I need to trim them earlier in the year because our frost date is September 15th, so that they have time to mature and get woody long before a killing frost comes along. So normally in the past, I would wait until the berries are over, probably another 2-3 weeks, and then I would trim the vines back. But this year I decided, as I see that new growth come up above the bearing canes, I'm gonna just prune them. So yesterday morning I did a whole bunch when I was out here, and I'm gonna see if that saves me from having so much winter dieback. If I trim them earlier and they have a longer time to get hardy before winter sets in. Now, I don't know that that is a big issue in places where your frost date is much later in the fall, because I keep thinking how many raspberries I'd have if I didn't have to trim these back, or if these were all hardy all the way out to the end and didn't freeze back. Anyway, so that's general rule of thumb is only your woody canes will bear fruit, and they need a whole season to turn woody. So all these tiny little green ones, these are next year's bearing canes, and they need to turn woody. And if I would leave them alone, they would turn woody before winter sets in. But to maximize your berry yield, we trim them, and then those little shoots that shoot out the side here, they need time to get woody. So it's actually, that's why the wild ones are so plentiful here. Nobody ever prunes them, so every cane is woody. You know, they're hardy because you're not pruning them. So it's me pruning them back that is causing the winter dieback, but I'm also trying to maximize my yield, so that's why I prune them. Anyway, I hope that all made sense to you. And I want to show you something that I learned on a Facebook group page that is specific to our state and our region. And there was an older gentleman on there talking about sweet onions. And I was like, wow, I can do that. That makes so much sense. Let me show you. So he had a photo of his wife holding a beautiful bouquet of very, very large sweet onions. And then of course people said, how do you get them to get so large? And he said the #1 trick is to ring them. And apparently when you ring them, and some of you may have already known this, but I'd never heard this before. You dig, once they're started and you can see little bulbs, you dig all the soil out from around the onion and leave only the root there. So I ringed about half of mine. The other half I didn't. And we're going to see if these get bigger than the ones that I didn't ring. Now, the other thing I wanted to show you is if your onions start doing this, like falling over, I have some more down there that are falling over. Don't be yelling at the kids or the dogs for running through your onions like I did before I knew that that's what is supposed to happen. So just like the potatoes where we talked last week with your root crops, When the harvest is, when the plant has reached its maturity, it starts taking all its energy down into the root to save it for winter. Like that's where the energy goes over winter. And when your onions do that, they're taking all the energy into the onion bulb to store, and that causes the tops to fall over, and eventually the tops will turn yellow and die. They'll be brown, but they really are gonna fall over while they're still beautiful and green, and there's nothing wrong with them. That's what's supposed to happen. Now most of these are sweet onions, and I'm sorry, I don't remember the variety. Next season, I will try to do much better with keeping track of the varieties so I can share them with all of you. But we planted these it was probably mid-April when we planted these. So they are almost 3 months in the ground. So they're getting close to their maturity date. So they'll start falling over. And then again, like I said with the potatoes, you don't want to harvest them for storing them before they're fully mature, because when they're fully mature, they've taken all that energy down into the bulb, and that will make them harder and easy. Like they'll store better if you wait until the onion is mature and the tops have fallen over. And then I'll just take the tops and braid them together, and I'll hang them in my cold room. First, we'll use the onions for all our salsa that we make, and the pasta sauce, and whatever we have left we will store for winter. But I won't use the sweet onions first for my salsa and pasta sauce and every recipe. My pepper cabbage takes onions. Down here at this end I have all my spring onions, and they have a stronger flavor, so I'll use those first. Because those are too strong and we don't like those as much. And they don't store quite as well for me as the sweet onions do. So I've got red beets here. I told my daughter she can come get red beets anytime she wants. My peppers, I'm gonna turn you around and show you my peppers. My peppers are coming on beautifully. So we had an inch of rain yesterday morning, right before our 4th of July parade. Our 4th of July parade actually got postponed a little bit because of the thunderstorms, but everything is just lush and beautiful this morning. And it's a joy to be out here. I picked some cabbage and made some coleslaw for a potluck yesterday. And I have something I want to show you. I'm not by nature a harvester and a preserver. My first love is growing things. Like I love to plant and grow things. So I don't, like when I harvest things, I actually get kind of sad to harvest it. And the preserving is a big chore, but I know that if I want to garden, I must preserve. So, but my first love is just growing things. I just want to grow things. But I'm going to show you what happens when you can't bring yourself to harvest things. So here I harvested a cabbage, and I actually have to pull the whole thing out because it'll be a long time before that gives tiny little cabbage heads again. And I probably need to plant something else here. This one should have been harvested a while ago, and it split open. There I harvested a beautiful purple one for my coleslaw. I've got 3 more purple ones, and I've got cabbage waiting to put for me to can some pepper cabbage. So I'll probably do that today. And the broccoli is still coming. You see these side shoots that are coming off where we harvested it, and we've been eating those in salads. And down here is my cauliflower. So beautiful. See, that one I should probably harvest. but it's so beautiful. And cauliflower, you have to pull up the whole plant. It won't give babies. And this is what I do to keep it nice and white, to keep the sun from making it turn yellow. Just take these little leaves that are on the inside and tuck it right. Tuck it down right over the head. I should do that with any that have heads on. Here's another one. I actually really probably should harvest these because there's a heat advisory for today. Looks like I've got cabbage worms on here too. I probably need to come out and harvest some cabbage and that cauliflower because we have a heat advisory for today, and they tend to get a little bitter or sunburnt when it's so hot. And you can probably see how hazy it is already. It's only like 67 degrees this morning, but the humidity is like 100% of humidity. Okay, I'm gonna show you the boys' watermelon. Boys' watermelons have really taken off. Here's some celery that I will use in my canning, and I'll also dry some. My tomatoes are doing wonderful. My cucumbers are growing like crazy. We haven't actually harvested any cucumbers yet, but the blossoms are on. And did you know that there is male and female cucumber blossoms? This one right here is a male blossom, because there's no tiny little cucumber behind it. And then trying to see if I can find a female one. Here is a little female blossom, and that's a little female blossom because they already have tiny cucumbers. Now, the pollinators need to go from a male flower to a female flower in order for that little cucumber to grow. If this doesn't get properly pollinated, that little cucumber will shrivel up and die. But here is an example of one that's been pollinated. The flowers dried up and it's gonna fall off, and we are going to have a cucumber. I will make pickles. We will can pickles out of most of these. We eat a few cucumbers fresh, but mostly we pickle them. And I've got those recipes on my Instagram, but I will also probably be sharing them on YouTube this year. And I will probably take these and fasten them up over here where I want them, because I want this little Thunbergia to grow up here. And then I've got some amaranthus growing there too, so I'll have to tie this one up over here. This is how large my sweet corn has gotten. This is me standing right by the sweet corn, and of course my big sunflowers that I'm never quite sure I put in the proper place because they make so much shade. Oh, the mosquitoes are getting me down here by the corn. The corn is just about to go into tassels, which is actually its blooms. Let me show you. So right here is the tassel pushing up here. By the end of the week, you'll probably see the tassels from the house, but this is actually the flower. It's like the corn's flower, and it's a beautiful stand of corn. So the peas are all done. We actually will probably pick them one more time, and then we'll pull them all out. And this is where I'll put my green beans and probably some fall broccoli and cauliflower. And look at all this purslane coming here. This is really, really a problem. So with purslane, when you hoe it or you till through it, every leaf that you leave in the ground can sprout again. So when I put my green beans here in my fall crops. I really don't know what I'm gonna do. I think what I'm going to do is I'm gonna pull everything that I can, gonna pick everything up out of the soil that I can, and then I'll plant my fall crops, and then I'll probably put grass clippings down real thick, and hopefully that will suffocate the purslane and keep it from coming back. It's not the worst weed in my opinion, but it does spread, and not by seeds. You know how I said, Grandma said 1 year, if you let your weeds go to seed for 1 year, you'll battle those same weeds for 7 years. Purslane just spreads every time you break it. Wherever you break it, it gives a new plant. Let me show you. I have an example of where I probably just hoed through it and left all the little pieces lay, and it's come back. Every little piece decided to grow on its own. So right here I have a patch where it was clean last week, and every little leaf of purslane that I hoed through has now sprouted. But what happened is I probably weeded and cleaned here, and then I was going to cover it with grass clippings like I did there, and I just didn't reach that far. So now I have a big problem there. My kale is really growing, and mostly I use the kale as treats for the cows. We may, dry it and put seasoning on it, and my family eats it that way. But we really don't eat a lot of kale otherwise, which tells you it's only in here for a little bit of decoration. My tomatoes are doing wonderfully. It looks like I have some that I need to tie up. I've got some baby tomatoes hanging on in there. Last year at the 4th of July, I remember making fresh salsa for our potluck picnic. So we were much more, I shouldn't say much more, but we were probably a good 2 to 3 weeks ahead of where we're at this year in the garden, because I already had fresh tomatoes on the 4th of July, and I don't have any this year yet. Oh, I know the other thing I was going to talk about. But real quick, these are the tomatoes that got some herbicide drift from the soybean field. One has completely died, and the other 1, 2, 3 are probably going to not die, but they won't thrive like the rest of them are. I was going to show you about blight on raspberries and talk some more about why blight happens. But first, let me show you the red raspberries that are coming on while I'm down here at this end of the garden. All those beautiful red raspberries. Okay, so here by my black raspberries, you can see that I've got some blight happening, and what will happen is those last berries will be small and seedy, and the plant won't have, see, there's one that's already completely gone. The plant won't have enough energy to finish growing those last ones. Now, why does blight happen? So yes, blight can be in your soil, or your plants can get it from the air. But a healthy, vigorous plant will be able to give you a good harvest even if they get blight. But with a berry crop this size, I should have been feeding my raspberries a lot of fertilizer. If I was a commercial produce grower like my brothers are, I'm sorry, the mosquitoes keep biting me back there. If I was a commercial produce growers like my brothers are, I would have taken note, and I would have upped the fertilizer that I pumped to my raspberries, because stress causes a plant to be more susceptible to blight and diseases. So with the proper diet, if you can call it that, I would have less, my plants would be less susceptible to the blight. But because You know, I'm not a professional, so I don't have, oh yeah, in there on the shelf I have that raspberry fertilizer that's made just for raspberries because it has more, I think it has more potash in, I'm not sure, but there's a different ratio to raspberry fertilizer. You know, so I would already have it on hand, and I would just start pumping it to them through the drip system. But I don't have that. I'm just a home gardener. So I look at them and I'm like, oh, it's gonna be a good raspberry year. And then when they start producing, I'm like, oh, I should have probably been fertilizing these. And that's how we get to this point. But that's okay. I'm not looking to make money off of perfect berries. If some of them are a little seedy, my family doesn't care. They make good pies, good smoothies. We will be just fine. It's not my livelihood. But I often think of, in terms, if you can relate growing crops to raising children, is you cannot expect to not pay attention to a child's diet and expect them to go all winter without picking up viruses or getting sick if you haven't been paying attention to the food that they nourish their bodies with. So you can't feed them junk food or let them eat whatever they want and then expect them not to get sick. And it's kind of the same with my raspberries. Yes, I did put some compost down, but that's kind of like saying, yeah, my child did eat a salad once a week. And then saying, well, I did what I could. No, it's not quite the same. I just put some compost down and said, well, we'll see what happens. And then here I am with blight in my black raspberries. But it's okay. It's not a failure. Like I said, I'm not trying to get rich off of the raspberries. I'm just feeding my family, and we're going to have plenty of berries for that. And the bugs are getting me. That inch of rain sure brought all the mosquitoes out. And I'll go show you the cherry tree because that's what we have to do today. So this cherry tree is the very first fruit tree my husband and I planted. And it is a good 15, maybe 18 years old. And no, I don't remember the variety, but it's a sour cherry tree. We can only grow sour cherries here. It gets too cold. Our winters are too long to grow sweet or even semi-sweet cherries. So we will pick all of these today. Cherries do not keep after you pick them, sour cherries anyway. I've heard people say you can put them in the refrigerator overnight, but I've never had real good luck with that. So when it's cherry picking day, it's all hands on deck, and we pick them, and then we get right to pitting them, and then I will turn them into cherry pie filling, and I may document it all and put it on Saturday's YouTube. We will see how ambitious I am about that. And this cherry tree is really past its prime, in my opinion. It's not as loaded with cherries as it some years has been, but we'll still get a nice amount of cherries. And then we have some more cherry trees, younger cherry trees, coming along down here. And then this one will eventually retire, and it will be used for firewood or smoking things because it's cherry.